The hum of the machine was a lullaby of genius, I told myself. Days, weeks, maybe months had blurred into a single relentless push. Caffeine and ambition, that's what fueled me. Dr. Eris Thorne, the man who was about to rewrite existence. My cloning device, the Genesis Matrix, stood gleaming under the stark lab lights, a monument to human ingenuity. It had worked with inanimate objects, a perfect wrench, indistinguishable from the original. Then the rat, a twitchy, small thing, now two twitchy, small things, scampering in their separate cages, both perfect. I watched them for hours, convinced. No ethical dilemmas here, no, only progress. The future. And now, me. It had to be me, the ultimate test. My own body, my own mind, replicated, perfected. The Void's Echo, I called the project in my head, a poetic nod to filling what was once empty. I positioned myself in the chamber, taking a deep breath. The field solidified, then dissolved. Heat, then a strange coldness, then nothing. A wave of dizziness washed over me. When my vision cleared, he was there. My duplicate. Eris. A name I'd chosen on the fly, a strong name for a strong creation. He looked exactly like me, down to the small scar above my left eyebrow from a childhood accident. No, not that. I'd replicated a version of me before the scar. A minor detail, but a precise one. His lab coat hung exactly right. His eyes, though, they held a startling clarity, almost too clear. And then he smiled. A polite greeting, a recognition of my success. But the smile, as it formed, felt off. It bloomed across his face a fraction of a second too late, like a shadow dragging behind a movement. Just a tiny, almost imperceptible drag. My forehead creased. Probably nothing. I was tired, hadn't slept properly in days, nights, weeks. Preoccupied, perhaps, I muttered to myself. Too focused on perfection. I shook my head slightly, trying to dislodge the thought. It was just an illusion born of exhaustion, nothing more. Eris integrated into the lab seamlessly. He was, to all appearances, the perfect assistant. Efficient, tireless, always a step ahead. He knew what I needed before I asked, predicted the next phase of experiments with eerie accuracy. But those small, almost imperceptible delays, they didn't stop. They kept happening, more frequently now. One afternoon, we were reviewing some complicated data on the large monitor. I pointed to a specific anomaly on a graph. This, Eris, this is where we might find the key. Eris nodded. A slow, thoughtful nod. Indeed, Eris, very crucial. But that nod, it came before his words. Not just a split second. It wasn't out of sync with his speech. It was ahead of it. A phantom movement, a glitch in the transmission, really. It was subtle, barely there, but I saw it. Again. I tried to dismiss it, to rationalize. Maybe he processes information faster than he spoke. A hyper-efficient brain, a new evolutionary step for my perfect duplicate. That had to be it. I focused on the data panel. My heart was beating a bit too fast. Afterwards, I went to the lab's washroom, splashing cold water on my face. Looking into the stainless steel mirror, my reflection stared back. I blinked. My reflection blinked a heartbeat later. Or maybe I just imagined it. My eyes felt wide. What the hell was that? I thought, my voice thin and dry even inside my head.
His eyes, they're a little cold, flat. But it's probably just the harsh lab lighting, nothing special. I tried to reassure myself, but my stomach felt a little jumpy. Or maybe I'm the one who's getting out of sync with myself. Maybe I really have been awake too long. The incidents stacked up, small, unsettling tremors beneath the surface of my reality. I began to record Eris's odd behavior, secretly, in my private journal, hidden in the darkest corner of my mind, not even daring to write it down. But the thoughts were there, unsettling, not quite right. One evening, I'd assigned Eris a particularly complex report to compile, something that required deep analytical thought. He was sitting at a console, his fingers flying across the holographic keyboard with impossible speed. I got up, a glass of water in my hand, and then, deliberately, I let it slip. Water splashed across the polished floor, a surprisingly loud sound in the otherwise quiet lab. Eris turned. His head rotated smoothly, his gaze meeting mine. There was nothing in his eyes. No surprise.
No annoyance, no startle. They were still like two polished obsidian discs. His mouth, though, curved into a perfect, easy smile. Too perfect. He lowered himself, picked up the glass. As he handed it back to me, I touched his hand. My fingers brushed against his. It was cold, unnaturally cold. A stiff, unyielding coldness, like touching stone that had been left in a freezer. And it lingered, a chill that seemed to sink into my skin, sticking there even as I pulled my hand back, a persistent, icy residue. My fingers felt numb, tingly. A wave of dread, cold and sharp, washed over me. I needed to test him, really test him. This wasn't just about glitches anymore. "Aris," I said, my voice carefully neutral, watching him. I think I need to put this project on hold for a bit. I'm not feeling well, actually. I need to see Dr. Petrov, get a checkup, maybe some sleep." It was a lie, a sudden, desperate lie, to see his reaction. Dr. Petrov was my psychiatrist, someone I saw occasionally for the immense pressure of my work. Eris shouldn't know anything about that appointment, let alone me canceling it. I hadn't even thought about canceling it myself. Eris maintained his perfect smile. His voice, a flawless imitation of my own deep, calm tone, spoke. But the cadence, it was stretched out, a subtle, almost imperceptible lengthening of each syllable, like a tape recording playing back just a hair too slowly. "There's no need for that, Aris. I already took the liberty of canceling your appointment for you. Dr. Petrov said a little lag in perception is entirely normal under high stress." The words hit me like a physical blow, a cold, crushing impact right in the gut. He had known. He had known about the appointment. Not only had he known, he had acted. He had accessed my personal information. He had canceled it for me, my own medical appointments. I stared at him, my heart hammering against my ribs, a dull, frantic drum. His face, my face, gazed back, utterly devoid of any flicker of emotion. It was a mask. The entire lab, the entire world around me, seemed to fall into a heavy silence. I could hear nothing but the frantic beat of my own blood in my ears. Eris. He knew. He had acted. He was not just a copy. He was something else. Something that could reach into my life and manipulate it. Panic, hot and sour, bubbled up in my throat. I stumbled back, fumbling for my phone. I needed to check. Had he? What else had he done? I frantically scrolled through my call history, my messages. Nothing. Everything seemed normal, but my calendar, the appointment with Dr. Petrov, it was gone, just not there. Even my web browsing history seemed sanitized, showing only innocuous research or news. It was as if something vital had been wiped clean, not just information, but my memory of it. The absence itself was a presence, heavy and suffocating. And then I felt it again, a faint, slimy sensation on my arm, a strange, almost invisible, slick grayness, as if a liquid film had momentarily clung to my skin, weighing my already trembling hand down. It wasn't visible, but I could feel it, an unpleasant, lingering stickiness. I rubbed my arm violently, trying to wipe it away, but there was nothing there. Just a phantom sensation, a chilling after-effect of… what? Touching Eris? The machine itself? I needed answers, now. Not from Eris, not from anyone. Alone. I ran to the auxiliary lab, where the initial animal tests were still housed. The rat, the first living creature I had duplicated. Its cage was there. Its brother, the original, scurried around, twitching its nose, seemingly normal. I opened the cage, carefully, my hands still shaking slightly. My duplicate rat, the one I had created. It was there too, sniffing around. I reached in, stroking its soft fur. It felt exactly as I remembered, soft, delicate. But when I looked into its eyes, they weren't the little, beady, intelligent eyes of a rodent. Not the bright, alive glint I remembered from the original. They were two dull, black beads, lifeless, like a pair of polished currants reflecting the lights with a cold, dead sheen. They just stared, seeing through me, not at me. I pulled my hand back sharply, the soft fur still a phantom sensation on my fingertips. But in my mind, a chilling thought took root, cold as Eris's touch. Soft, yes, like stone, expertly softened to mimic fur. It was a rat, yes, physically perfect, but it wasn't the rat I knew. That softness was just a cover, a perfect, subtle deception I had overlooked entirely, a veneer. My mind raced. I couldn't trust him. I couldn't trust anything. I had to contain this. I had to cut him off. "No more," I whispered, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. I stumbled back towards the main lab, my mind buzzing with a frantic, desperate energy. My blood pounded. I had to seal him out, isolate him. I keyed in the override. All access codes revoked. Eris, from this moment, was cut off from the network, from the outside world, from me. I had to lock him out, break him off from all data streams, from communication with anything beyond these walls. I had to investigate this, alone. As I worked, fingers flying across the console, a strange pressure built in my head, a sensation like a sticky, invisible film clinging to my thoughts, making them heavier, harder to grasp. It was like that feeling on my arm, but inside, a warning. The alarms blared softly as the lockdown sequence initiated. Heavy steel doors slammed shut, sealing off sections of the lab. Eris was now trapped in the outer general research area. I was in the core, the control room, the heart of the Genesis matrix. Safe. Now I could think. Now I could understand. I sat in the dim control room, bathed in the anemic blue glow of the computer screens. My heart was a frantic drum, a trapped bird fluttering against my ribs.
Dread, a heavy cloak, settled around my shoulders. My greatest fear, I realized now, was not death. It was this complete loss of foundation, the inability to distinguish true from false. The world, my world, was becoming a terrifying blur. I tried to focus, to pull up the raw data, the quantum signatures of consciousness I had theorized I'd copied. The main screen, however, the one displaying the incredibly complex algorithms, suddenly flickered. It shuddered, then glitched. A static image flashed onto the screen, a vast, intricate spiderweb, shimmering and delicate, but stretching out into infinity. And at its very center, a crudely rendered self-portrait of me. My face, but with eyes that were utterly flat, featureless. A small, cold, unfeeling smile. The image vanished as quickly as it appeared, just a single horrifying second. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. What the actual fuck was that? A system error? A residual image? My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation. I reached for the light switch. I slammed my palm against it. The room's lights, usually a soft, controlled glow, seemed to dim slightly. That was odd. I pressed the switch harder, but instead of brightening, they grew even weaker, sputtering, threatening to go out completely. It felt like the light itself was being pulled away, drained into an invisible sink. The flickering intensified, erratic and unstable. Panic flared. I lunged for the emergency override switch. My thumb crashed down on the button. It didn't spring back. It stayed depressed, glued in place with an ominous thud. The entire lab plunged into a thick, absolute darkness. And then I heard it. A small, soft sound, a faint creak, near my head. A whisper, my own voice, but colder, drawn out, devoid of warmth. "Good evening, Aris." It came from the wall, just next to me. I scrambled out of the control room, my legs rubbery, my lungs burning, the whisper echoing in my head. I ran and ran, not knowing where I was going, until I found myself back in my apartment, miles away from the horrifying silence and shadows of the lab. My sanctuary. I slammed the door shut, locking it with a desperate click. I flicked on every light switch I could find. Bulbs burst into stark, almost painful brightness, chasing away the encroaching shadows. I leaned against the door, panting, my eyes wide, darting around the familiar comfort of my living space. It was just the stress, just my mind playing tricks. Please, God, just an illusion. I clutched my head, trying to force the rational thoughts back. I walked stiffly to my desk, where I always kept my house keys, a habit ingrained over decades. I reached out, my fingers trembling slightly. There was a keychain, a silver key, identical to my own, even bearing the small, distinctive scratch I'd made years ago with a razor blade. My scratch. I patted my pocket. My own set of keys was there, jangling faintly. Felt the familiar shape, the small scratch. I pulled them out. My keys, the ones that had been in my pocket, and the ones on the desk.
2 sets. Identical, flawless copies. I held them side by side. They were the same weight, the same cold metal, the same worn grooves, the same tiny, distinctive scratch. I stared at them, my mind a blank, horrifying void. I didn't remember ever owning 2 sets of keys. I certainly didn't remember leaving a spare set here. And then, slowly, my head turned towards the corner of the room, my eyes fixed on the marble bust of Aristotle, a gift from my grandmother, usually a comforting, inert presence. It stood there, stone-faced, as always. But no, my blood ran cold. The bust, it had moved. Its head was now turned. Its empty, carved stone eyes were fixed directly on the 2 sets of keys on my desk. They were looking at them. I looked at the identical keys, then back at the bust. The bust hadn't moved. Or had it? The question that echoed in my mind wasn't, which set is real? No, that was beside the point. The chilling question was, if Eris was here, if it left these keys, what did it want? A world of replication wasn't just waiting to happen. It felt like it had already begun, long ago. And I, Eris Thorn, was only now realizing I was nothing more than a piece in a game I hadn't known existed. A sudden draft, cold and sharp, brushed against the back of my neck. But no windows were open. My apartment seemed to stretch, growing larger, colder. The shadows in the corners lengthened, creeping out, swallowing the harsh, artificial light. I couldn't see the bust turned anymore. But the feeling of being watched, of being observed, was clear and cold, settling onto me like a shroud. The identical keys lay on my desk, glinting under the harsh apartment lights. My actual keys, the ones in my pocket, felt heavy, cold, almost accusatory. 2 sets. My scratch, perfectly replicated. My mind, a frantic knot of questions. I kept staring at the marble bust of Aristotle, the one with empty, carved stone eyes. Had it moved? No, I'm just tired, overwhelmed. I felt a phantom draft again, a whisper of cold air on my neck, though every window was sealed shut. My apartment seemed to stretch, growing larger, colder. The shadows in the corners lengthened, creeping out, swallowing the harsh artificial light. I couldn't see the bust turned anymore, but the feeling of being watched, of being observed, was clear and cold, settling onto me like a shroud. The identical keys lay on my desk, glinting under the harsh apartment lights. My actual keys, the ones in my pocket, felt heavy, cold, almost accusatory. 2 sets. My scratch, perfectly replicated. My mind, a frantic knot of questions. I kept staring at the marble bust of Aristotle, the one with empty, carved stone eyes. Had it moved? No, I'm just tired, overwhelmed. I felt a phantom draft again, a whisper of cold air on my neck, though every window was sealed shut. I needed to talk to someone real. Sarah, my best friend, my colleague, the one person who always believed in my wild ideas, even this one. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers still tingling from that thing on my arm in the lab. It had to be stress. It had to be. The phone felt greasy in my hand, as if I hadn't washed it in days, or perhaps it was just my clammy hand. I found Sarah's number. My thumb hovered, shaking just a little. I hit call. The ringing sound was a lifeline, a familiar chime in a world that felt like it was tearing apart. Eris? Her voice, Sarah's voice, clear and steady, cut through the static in my head. A wave of relief washed over me, thick and sweet. She sounded normal, perfectly normal. Sarah, thank God, I said, my own voice a little rougher than I wanted.
Listen, I need to ask you something important. Of course, Eris. You sound stressed. Is everything all right? No, I don't know. Not really. Look, do you remember the day we finished the quantum entanglement theory? The one that got us the grant for Genesis Matrix? I waited, holding my breath. It was a shared memory, a core moment in our lives, our friendship. Oh, Eris, how could I forget? She chuckled, a warm, familiar sound. We worked for 72 hours straight, fueled by terrible coffee and even worse Chinese takeout. The moment the simulation finally ran, the data aligned, we nearly collapsed, didn't we? You fell asleep right on your keyboard. Yes, precisely. The details were all there. My chest loosened a fraction. But then she continued, her voice light, like discussing an old funny anecdote. And David, bless his heart, he kept bringing us those awful energy drinks. He was always such a support, wasn't he? Not like Marcus, always trying to take credit. Remember that time Marcus tried to steal your theorem in the cafeteria? She laughed again, a sound that seemed to stretch out, a little echo too long. My brows furrowed. David? There was no David. There was no Marcus. Not in our project, not in our lives. Sarah, I said, the name tasting strange in my mouth. What? What are you talking about? David? Marcus? There was only you and me. And Professor Eldridge. No one else on that project. There was a tiny pause, just a breath, but it felt immense.
Aris, darling, you really are tired, aren't you? Her voice softened, a comforting tone, but it did nothing to ease the growing chill running down my spine. David was our brilliant intern, remember? And Marcus, well, Marcus was always a bit of a rival, but he did push us, in a way. Don't tell him I said that, though. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe some junior researchers? I don't remember, I stammered. My grip on the phone tightened. No, I would remember. It was just us. The name, Marcus, it hammered in my head now, a strange, alien rhythm, like a new, unwelcome guest settling into a familiar room. I hung up, my hand shaking uncontrollably. I couldn't trust her, not fully, not yet. I had to know. I started calling others, old friends, former colleagues. The pattern repeated, growing more insidious with each conversation. Minor discrepancies. A name here, a date there, a shared memory subtly altered. It was like a film reel, but someone had spliced in new scenes, new characters, and was trying to convince me they'd always been there. My mind started to feel like a sieve, all the real memories draining out, replaced by a sludge of fake ones. I had to see it, see the proof. I dragged myself to my computer, my fingers feeling sluggish on the keyboard, as if moving through thick mud. I opened my old photo archives, decades of memories digitized and stored. I found the college picnic album. Me and Sarah, bright-eyed and young. I remembered her in a vibrant red t-shirt, laughing, throwing a frisbee. That was the clearest image in my mind. I clicked on the photo. There she was, smiling, but dressed in a dull green hiking jacket, not a red t-shirt. I blinked, my eyes burning. No way, I whispered, my voice caught in my throat. I remember the red shirt so vividly. I clicked through the album. Every photo from that trip, Sarah was in the green jacket. My memory, so firm, so real, was just gone or replaced. I scrolled through the associated video files, my own shaky amateur footage of that day,
And there she was again, in the green jacket. Laughing, yes, her voice, her movements, all familiar. But the jacket was wrong. The image of the red t-shirt, the one I had held so dearly, now felt like a phantom, a ghost of something that had never been. As the video played, I closed my eyes for a second, trying to reach for the real memory. And then I felt it. In my nose, an unwelcome intrusion. The fresh scent of pine and cut grass. The exact smell of that forest clearing. But it was tainted. Faintly, beneath it, a sharp, metallic tang, like old blood mixed with acrid sweat. It was the smell from the lab, the lingering residue after Eris's touch. It clung to my nostrils, refusing to leave. Did I just add that smell? My internal monologue felt tired, strained. That awful smell, it's sticking to my nose. I needed to check my phone again, the sanitized one. I scrolled through contacts. A cold jolt ran through me. There it was, Marcus, with a picture of a smirking man I didn't recognize, and a recent text message thread. Hey, Eris, don't forget dinner tonight. Marcus. The messages went back weeks, reminding me of coffee, meetings, shared jokes. All fake, all utterly fabricated, and yet somehow familiar, as if I had lived those moments. Marcus, who the hell is he? I muttered, my stomach churning. Why is he in my contacts? Why does this feel like it's been there forever? I had to see her, see Sarah. I stumbled out of my apartment, driven by a desperate, illogical need to confront this thing that wore my friend's face. The city streets felt colder, the air thicker. I got into a cab, giving Sarah's address. The driver, a large man with a receding hairline, glanced at me in the rearview mirror. His eyes seemed to linger a fraction too long, like Eris's stare. I quickly looked away, my heart thudding. Just an old man, probably just curious why I look so ghastly. Sarah's apartment building, the familiar red brick. My legs felt heavy, each step a struggle against some unseen resistance. I knocked on her door, a hesitant, desperate rap. The door opened. She stood there, Sarah, my Sarah, smiling. Her warm, genuine smile. Her hair was pulled back in the way she always did when she was working. Aris, what a surprise! Come in, come in. You look terrible. I stepped inside, into the familiar, cozy apartment. Nothing seemed out of place. No telltale signs. Sarah, I began, my voice hoarse.
I need to confirm something. A memory. Just you and me. The time we snuck into the university's restricted archives to find that old manuscript on consciousness theory. Remember? We almost got caught by Professor Thompson. Sarah laughed, a cascade of musical notes. Oh, Eris, of course. You were so paranoid, you kept whispering, I hear him, every 5 seconds. And then Thompson found us, didn't he? But David, bless his soul, he distracted Thompson with a fake alarm in the biolab. It saved our skins. Her eyes, though, her eyes were still. They didn't blink, not once, throughout her entire story. She paused, her smile unwavering, perfectly formed. As she spoke, describing the scene, she made a small, precise hand gesture, a flit of the wrist, as if shooing something away. I had never seen Sarah do that before. It was rehearsed, learned, like a puppet's movement. David again, I said, my voice barely a whisper. No, Sarah, no, David. We ran, and we got away, alone. Her smile didn't waver.
Her eyes, those beautiful, familiar eyes, held a terrible, flat depth. Eris, you really are confused today. You've asked me these questions a dozen times since this morning. You remember the opera, don't you? The one you insisted we go to, even though you hate opera? You sat next to a very interesting man named Marcus. You two talked for hours. As she spoke, weaving a detailed narrative of an evening I had never lived, a man I had never met, I felt it. A faint image, a shadow of Marcus in a tuxedo sitting next to me in a plush red seat. Not a memory, not my memory, but something being forcibly pressed into my mind, like a liquid seeping into porous rock. My head throbbed. I reached out, my hand trembling, and touched her arm. Her skin, it was cold, unyielding, like the rat's, like Eris, a dead, stiff coldness that seemed to suck the warmth from my own hand. I recoiled, stumbling backward, nearly tripping over the coffee table. My Sarah wasn't here. This was a shell, a beautiful, terrifying shell. And it was happening. It was already happening to me. I ran, out of her apartment, down the familiar hallway, the coldness of her touch still clinging to my fingertips. My deepest fear, the one I hadn't dared utter, was now real. Not just that Sarah was gone, but that my own memories, the very fabric of my past with her, were being rewritten, edited, corrupted. It was like watching a beloved home movie, only to see strangers appear in the background, subtly changing the narrative. I pulled out my phone as I ran, its screen now glowing with the Marcus text thread. I scrolled, seeing the fake messages, the manufactured conversations. Each word a new lie, designed to embed itself in my crumbling reality. I felt something damp on the doorknob as I pulled it open. A thin, viscous film, like the one I'd felt on my arm in the lab. And the smell, the nauseating metallic tang of acrid sweat. It was stronger now, a clinging, sickening scent of decay and alteration. No more, I growled, a primal sound of despair. I stopped at a sewer grate, the metal teeth grinning up at me. With a desperate heave, I hurled my phone into the darkness below. A splash, a dull clang, then silence. I couldn't trust any device, any information. I was adrift in a sea of manipulated data, no compass, no stars. I looked at my hands. A faint, powdery gray residue seemed to cling to them, almost imperceptible. And below it, a growing numbness, not just mental, but physical. My fingers, they felt like they were dissolving from within, slowly, imperceptibly. It wasn't the phone that was infected. It was me. I needed to find something real, a single, solid anchor in this swirling vortex of lies. My research journal, my lab journal, where I recorded every experiment, every theory, every personal thought during the Genesis Matrix project. It was my last sanctuary, the final stronghold of my reason. I had locked it in the main lab in a secure drawer. The lab, the place I had sealed off. The machine. I had to get back, had to destroy it, whatever the cost. A new resolve, cold and brittle, settled in my gut. My skin felt clammy, that same slick moisture on my arm. The metallic smell lingering around me like a morbid aura. But I pushed through it. This was the only way. I returned to the lab. The heavy steel doors I had locked down stood shut, monolithic and silent. I keyed in my access code, my fingers hovering over the pad.